Thank you for watching this presentation of Introduction to Standards. PCCD and OVS want to better inform and educate the field with the OVS Consolidated Standards. Pennsylvania has long been considered a leader when it comes to these operational standards that are designed to maintain quality services and programming delivered by skilled advocates and staff. The standards are meant to be a guide to VSPs for best practices and excellent service delivery, provide minimum expectation for VSPs, and ensure uniformity of service delivery across the Commonwealth. Standards provide the minimum expectations of victim service delivery and ensure professionalism of the victim service field. To accomplish this, we are kicking off a series of recordings that will walk program staff through our standards. These will be short recordings, up to 30 minutes in length, and posted on PCCD's YouTube channel. The OVS newsletter will announce new recordings as they are available. This is an introduction PowerPoint presentation that describes a basic overview of what an OVS standard is, how they are created and modified, and structure of the standards. This PowerPoint presentation will be recorded and placed on our YouTube channel for subrecipients to review as needed. Subsequent PowerPoint presentations will be created for each OVS standard. In this recording, we will provide an overview of PCCD and OVS, our Victim Services Advisory Committee, and the responsibility of the Services and Standards Subcommittee, all of whom work together to develop and adopt programmatic standards and guidelines. We will highlight how the standards are arranged and provide context for them. ECCD was established in 1978 by law. Our agency serves as a planning and policy making hub focusing on all aspects of the criminal and juvenile justice system throughout Pennsylvania. Our mission is to enhance the quality, coordination, and planning within the criminal and juvenile justice system to facilitate the delivery of services to victims of crime and to increase the safety of our communities. At the direction of lawmakers and the PCCD Commission, staff work with a wide range of justice professionals and collaborative partners to examine, propose solutions, and to evaluate criminal justice initiatives. Much of our work focuses on prevention, reintroducing offenders back into the community, and promotion of rights, restoration, and empowerment for crime victims. The PCCD Commission is led by a chairman appointed by the governor. The commission is comprised of 6 advisory committees, the School Safety and Security Committee, and 2 training boards. PCCD day-to-day operations are led by the executive director. PCCD offices are comprised of 4 offices: Office of Justice Programs, Office of Victim Services, Office of Research, Evaluation, and Strategic Policy Development, and Office of Financial Management and Administration. No one asked to be a victim of crime. We understand the long road to healing associated with trauma, the demand to seek justice, and to uphold victims' rights. The Crime Victims Act establishes requirements and duties of the OVS. OVS works to help crime victims transcend their trauma by funding victim service agencies that work directly with victims' survivors, offering financial help to victims' survivors through the Victims Compensation Assistance Program, or VCAP, and collaborating with criminal justice and allied professionals that advocate and respond to the needs of victims' survivors. OVS has 2 areas of focus: VCAP and the Victim Services Program, VSP. VCAP specialists review and process compensation claims. The VSP specialists share in grant associated tasks to include, but not limited to, quarterly reports, data, outcomes, and monitoring activities. VSP specialists provide technical assistance with funded agencies or subgrantees to help them align their policies and procedures with the standards. We always keep crime victims and survivors at the forefront of our mission and our work. The Crime Victims Act also establishes the Victim Service Advisory Committee, VSAC. The composition of the committee and frequency of meetings are specified within the Act. The committee meets quarterly and exists to inform and support the Commission. Responsibilities of the committee are to make policy, determine priorities, and to set performance standards for the VCAP program and for victim services across the state. The committee's vision is survivor-focused services are available and accessible for all crime victims and communities. The committee's mission is driven by the standard of excellence in crime victim services. Guidance statements of the committee can be found on the reference slide of this presentation. Guiding statements include information relative to rights, safety, restoration, trust, respect, dignity, validation, diversity, lived experiences, trauma-informed services, responsible funding, and partnerships and stewardships for healthier and more resilient communities. To help support VSAC, two subcommittees were established. They are the Access to Services Subcommittee and the Services and Standards Subcommittee. Each VSAC member is assigned to one of the two subcommittees, and each subcommittee may also include those that work at local victim service programs. Each subcommittee is led by a chairperson who is appointed by the VSAC chair. Meetings are held on a quarterly basis and sometimes more often if needed. To assist in accomplishing subcommittee goals and objectives, the subcommittee chair has the ability to form other groups focusing on specific priorities. PCCD first established these standards in 2007. OVS recognizes the administrative responsibilities agencies and subgrantees have when it comes to implementing the standards. Commitment and adherence applies to all victim service staff within the organization. This training is intended to be a guide for highlighting the standard and providing support to agencies and subgrantees in the field. Specifically, the standards promote compliance, consistency, and guidelines among programs both in large and urban agencies, as well as smaller and more rural areas. The Office of Victim Services is responsible to administer VOCA, RAZA, and VOJO funds. The OVS Consolidated Standards are guided by and work in conjunction with these three funding streams. They are Victims of Crime Act or VOCA funding, which is federal funding generated by the Crime Victims Fund and awarded to states. This federal grant program provides funding for the provisions of services to victims of crime, as well as financial support via victims' compensation assistance to victims of crime. VOCA supports the provision of direct services to victims of crime. This includes a broad array of services for victims of violence ranging from crisis intervention, shelter, counseling, and criminal justice advocacy. Rights and Services Act, RAZA funding. The source of funds for RAZA is the Victim Services VWS Fund, which is comprised of a $25 penalty assessment and convicted diverted in Pennsylvania. RAZA provides the primary funding to support the provisions of services that are assigned to the district attorney under the Crime Victims Act, or CVA. RAZA is a restricted revenue account available annually without appropriation. The funding available within this fund is dependent upon assessments and collections at the county level. And finally, the Victims of Juvenile Offender or VOJO funding, which occurs by state appropriation and provides financial support, training, and technical assistance as statutorily created by the Commonwealth's Crime Victims Act, specifically for victims whose offenders are under the age of 18. Act 86 of 2000 establishes rights and services specifically for victims of juvenile offenders, enabling victims to assert their rights and navigate the juvenile justice system in Pennsylvania. VOJO is funded by an annual state appropriation. VOJO provides the primary funding to support the provisions of services that are assigned to the prosecution and juvenile probation under the Crime Victims Act, the Juvenile Act, and Pennsylvania Rules of Juvenile Court Procedure. Agencies deemed to have PCCD OVS as the oversight entity must adhere to the standards. Not all agencies that receive VOCA, RAZA, and/or VOJA funding have PCCD over VS as the oversight entity. Programs receiving PA Coalition to Advance Respect, or PCAR, and/or PA Coalition Against Domestic Violence, or PCADV, funding also accept coalition standards and guidelines and therefore have these entities for oversight. We defer the coalition's expertise in working with sexual violence and domestic violence survivors to set minimum standards and best practices. Likewise, child advocacy centers who are accredited by the National Children's Alliance follow their guidelines and standards and therefore have the NCA for oversight. The Services and Standards Subcommittee has representatives who work in rape crisis centers, domestic violence programs and shelters, and in child advocacy centers to get parity with the OBS Consolidated Standards. As a disclaimer, in instances where a comparable standard does not exist with ECAR, PCADV, or NCA, the PCCD standard applies. An example of this would be the Emergency Financial Assistance Service that is not supported by other oversight agencies. Victim Services Program staff would review the agency's policy and procedure during the grant monitoring process. As mentioned above, the work to create standards is entrusted to the Services and Standards Subcommittee by the VSAC. New standards are created and existing ones are updated to reflect best practices in the field. Oftentimes, to accomplish this, work groups may be developed to work on specific standards. Work groups are expected to meet regularly and report back to the subcommittee meetings. When the work group has completed what they believe is a comprehensive draft, the work group chair will present the draft version to the Services and Standards Subcommittee. Discussions ensue, and edits and additions may occur until the subcommittee is satisfied to present the standard to the VSAC. After the subcommittee presents the standard to the VSAC, a discussion and vote will take place to modify and/or approve the standard. Once the standard is approved by VSAC, OVS will advise the field of the new or updated standard. One of the overreaching goals in creating standards is to provide consistency in the field. In creating standards, VSAC, the subcommittee, and OVS have the standards appear in a consistent format. Therefore, you will see standards laid out in this way: course standard, program requirements, practice tips, excellent markers, and resources and/or relevant legislation. The course standard gives context to and lays the foundation for creating the standard. It explains why this standard is imperative in victim service work. It also provides pertinent terms and definitions as a means of context. Please email or call the program staff contact assigned to your grant with any questions. Thank you.